am so excited to be here again with Stanley Pierre-Louis, head of the ESA. Thank you for joining us.
It's exciting to be here, and I'm glad we were able to do this, even if it's virtual.
Me too. Even though, like right now, it's snowing in Chicago, I would love to be in LA. But anywho's, I'm super excited to talk to you because last year when we spoke, we were talking about the state of video games and how video games impact us all, how it can affect, our communities, our children, and now the world has changed drastically since then. And as head of the ESA, I know that you have a lot of insights about that.
Well, you're right that the world has changed. And first and foremost, our thoughts are with all the people who are being affected by this pandemic in a very direct way. And our hearts go out to all of the first responders who are making our lives better every day as they try to make their way through this incredible, surreal moment that we are living through. As we think about where we are as a video game industry, what makes us gratified is that all the things we've been talking about the power of games to bring people together, to be inclusive, are being tested and are helping our community really come together. But beyond our community, being used in ways that we could have never imagined. Video games are now creating more communities than ever. They're something that everyone is leaning on, including government agencies and non-governmental organizations. And you're also seeing this interesting dynamic of video games not only being entertaining for those who like to play games, and for even the traditional audiences who like to watch people playing games, but you're seeing it rolled out in new ways. So on any given night on a sports channel, you'll see NBA stars, now competing on NBA 2K because they can't play together. You'll see the same with the NHL and NASCAR. And so people are beginning to see the majesty of where video games have gone, like the artistry of it, the technological advancement. When they come to their TVs, they can't even tell that the people aren't real, that it's a video game. And so that's been an exciting development to see that, video games are now being used as sport to help tie us over until we can all come together and watch it together in real life.
And one of the things that really exemplifies this, last year when we were talking about the World Health Organization and how they, were designating screen time in video games as potentially addictive. And now they have come out to talk about how the benefits of video games are helping people stay home. So like exactly to your point, the world has changed, but how have you seen people talk about video games differently now that we're kind of all focused in on this particular industry?
Well, more and more, you are seeing people look to video games for a number of things. When we talk to parents about their kids playing games, one of the things they realize is video games are, yes, about the fun and entertainment, but they also sometimes are a digital playground. That's where kids are playing together and connecting on games like Fortnite. And when we're in a crisis like this, there's a reason people will turn to video games. It's because it's a great way to maintain those connections while you're being entertained. And when we see governmental organizations talk about the impact video games can have in a positive way, and yes, when the World Health Organization, which for the past 2 years hasn't had many kind things to say about the industry, turn on a dime and see the value of it and partner with industry in so many ways, we find that gratifying. It's an effort that we not only applaud, but make sure that we support not only with World Health Organization, but a number of other organizations that are out there trying to get people to change behavior, to socially distance, to wash hands. One of the other things you're seeing from our industry is the ability to really coalesce around those messages. So you see video game companies sharing the messages with their audiences on a global basis. You see donations occurring from both large and small companies and working with the communities to raise those funds. And you're seeing other efforts to raise funds, not just through donations, but through gameplay or through other charitable events. And so we've really seen a galvanizing moment for our industry, both as industry and as fans, to help in this effort. And I'm excited about seeing that video games are playing such a positive role in helping flatten the curve.
I mean, it's been very validating to now see that video games are kind of not just seen as entertainment, but a solution to some of the problems that we have as far as like education, as far as connecting to one another, as far as like having something to escape to. With that being said, recently the ESA has rolled out an initiative called Game Generation, and I just wanted you to explain more about that. I've been seeing a lot of what Game Generation has been doing, and I'm loving it. But like, could you tell us more about it?
Absolutely. We were excited to take a moment and celebrate games. And we wanted to do that through this initiative called Game Generation, where we talk about the sense of community that video games help build, the sense of inclusivity of anyone can play with anyone and maybe even gain empathy by playing as other characters or against other characters. And to talk about the fact that video games are being used in so many different ways, not only as entertainment, but as education, in healthcare. And now we're seeing it being used in a global pandemic as a way to change social behavior for the good. We wanted to get that message out, but also have people share their stories, whether it's on gamegeneration.org, our platform, or on the platforms they love. What we wanted to do is encourage people to take hold of the narrative that so often defines us in negative light and help us position us in a better way because we know what games are. The most interesting thing to me about this initiative is that when I talk to people who are not from the industry, but we talk about the power of games, when we talk about the different stats about games that they're unaware of, they're excited and motivated about it. And then when I talk to people who are in the industry about it, they say, of course, that's why I love games. That's how it impacts me. So we're finding that the messages really resonate and people have been waiting for this opportunity to talk about games. So we were really excited when it had a great launch and a lot of people have engaged by sharing their stories, by participating in so many different ways. And now we're in a situation where games are being used as a way to help change social conduct for the better. It validates the fact that we thought this was not only a good idea, but the right time for this idea. And it really helps encapsulate it, just this moment in time where we live now.
I mean, we've been talking about video games in a very sort of general way, but is there any specific examples that have really stood out to you in the past several months of how video game developers or specific video game titles have truly impacted individuals in a positive way?
Well, just thinking about the last few weeks and how video games have been used, there's just a myriad of ways. So there was an article in the Washington Post this month about a classroom in Quebec that had trouble getting access to some of its textbooks and materials, and they were learning ancient Egypt. And the teacher said, "What if I used Assassin's Creed Origin, which is one of these games by Ubisoft where they hire the best experts, the best academics to really go through and find these amazing kernels of knowledge. And so much of the game is fact and not fiction, that it's being able to be used as an educational tool. And so Ubisoft provided a license to that class and a few others to be able to use it royalty free and learn about ancient Egypt while we're in this situation. You also have video game companies working with each other and with their audiences to help raise funds. And it's amazing to see how the impact that it's had. So everyone from Sony to Xbox to smaller companies are all working to not only donate money, but to raise funds. You know, Bungie announced an effort to raise funds for local first responders. And in the first 24 hours, raised more than $350,000. And that's power. That's just a powerful thing to happen. And it just makes you feel good about how our industry comes together. And that's a collaboration, not just of companies, but of the fans. That just shows that the ecosystem just has a genuinely good heart and they're passionate about making sure we contribute in a positive way to the larger swath of society.
I am so glad that you touched on Assassin's Creed being used for education, because a lot of times when I've personally spoken to educators and teachers, they think of like, well, what sort of educational games can I use to impact students? And you just mentioned Assassin's Creed, which is looked at as an entertaining, fun experience, but if framed properly, can be immensely educational. And now that we're in a situation where we're forced to like sort of take a different perspective on the tools that we have available to us, like that's super, validating to hear, like having been in this industry and talking about the intellectual merits beyond entertainment. And look, Assassin's Creed is making an impact. So what do you see next, as far as how after the pandemic, obviously, like this is definitely kind of made us slow down and made us focus in on this industry a little bit more. But like moving forward, what sorts of things are you expecting to come from this?
Well, with so many more people engaging in games, I think it's going to open up new avenues for people to think about how they can be a part of this industry. One of the great things about this industry is that there are so many different ways in. You can be great at coding, you can be great at art, but every company, whether large or small, also needs other kinds of talents. And as people engage, I think it'll make them want to be a part of it more. Girls who play video games are 3 times as likely to want to get a STEM degree. And women and girls who go through college, starting having played video games, matriculate at a higher rate than other tech industries. And so you may see a boom of people who are inspired by the games they're playing now to carry that on into STEM degrees. And whether they land in the video game industry or they make simulation tools for the aerospace industry, that energy around learning what's going on behind the screen and under the hood is what is exciting about playing games the way that we're playing them and seeing the amazing quality of these games. So I think it's going to inspire a lot of people to want to participate. I think the general public is going to come out with a very different view of video games than they may have before, because they're seeing how it engages their friends, their colleagues, their children. And I think that's exciting to see how people connect. I've got a 13-year-old and he's doing virtual school, but in between his classes and between his studies, he's able to connect with friends who want to play Minecraft together, or they want to play Magic the Gathering online together. And so there's a lot of conversation happening. And I think parents are seeing that kids are actually connecting with their friends and having meaningful conversations, and they're learning problem solving skills and resilience. And I think the more people who get to see that up close and personal, the better it is for our industry. And we should encourage that.
Well, you as a parent, how do you encourage other parents, not just like, all right, my child needs to be educated, this is the tool I'm going to use, but how do you encourage parents to like play games themselves and
Sure.
become more engaged with video games, even if they didn't grow up with them, or even if they it seems daunting to the parent? How do we get more parents to play video games for themselves and video games with their kids?
Sure. Well, a few things. One, when we talk about education, there are a number of companies that actually focus on the education module as opposed to entertaining games that have an educational component. So whether you're looking at Minecraft, which has an education edition, there's a company called Legends of Learning that teaches lots of subjects through learning. There's a company called iCivics that currently has a free program that parents can use and educators can use while they're home, but they also offer it to middle schools all around the country. I think the biggest thing is to make sure that parents are engaging, and the ESRB, the Entertainment Software Rating Board, actually did a blog that's fantastic on how to deal with the COVID virus and kids who want to play games. I think first and foremost is to learn about the games by understanding the ratings and understanding, is that an appropriate game for your child in that age range? There's also information related to how you can manage what's being played and how it's being played. So on most devices, you can limit not only the games that get played, but how much time is spent playing the games, how much money is spent playing the games. And you can even limit access to the internet, meaning can you connect with other people and interact with others or not? So if you don't want your child interacting with others, you can limit that on so many of these devices. And then there's talking and creating guidelines around the games so that there's an understanding within the family of what's appropriate and not. And then the best thing of all is to play the game, to understand what's happening in the game, to see the gameplay, to see the skill that your child is developing, but also to understand what do these ratings really mean in real time. I think the other two things I would stress for people is, one, make time for breaks. So I make sure that my 13-year-old, gets up and around, and we change things up, because particularly in these days where you're doing virtual learning, usually from your bedroom, you're not going to move that much. And I think the second is to model good behavior. If you're going to the dinner table with your mobile phone or your mobile device, you're modeling behavior that someone else is going to track in the house. And so it's about making sure you demonstrate that balance. And this has been an interesting time for all of us who are used to scurrying around traffic and commuting and from meeting to meeting. We now have this moment where we can actually use more of our time to be a little bit more focused on our work, but also, because we're all working from home, to see what all the other dynamics are. So it's to take time to really understand and appreciate all that's around you, and to participate in it while you're still going through this surreal moment in global history.
So with you personally, now that you are working from home more, do you find yourself working more or less? And if you work any less, do you have time to play video games for yourself?
Well, what's great about it is I do have a 13-year-old who wants to play some games, and so we definitely get more games in than I normally might. I would say I'm probably working the same amount, but at different trenches. So my hours are now different because I've got to make up different times of day. So, we've got a dog, so you've got to walk the dog certain times of the day. So you take the commute out, and you take some of the other interruptions out. You're actually probably working in a more concentrated way. And then you've got to peel yourself out to participate in the other things that are going on in life around you. But I would say just more focused work and more intense. Um, and actually, I find that I try to vary between video conference and phone call, because with the video conference, you're usually in one spot staring at a camera. And I sometimes have, three back-to-back meetings. And if they're all staring into a screen, you can't move around the same way. So I try to vary that. But I would say it's more intense, but probably the same amount of work.
Right. So what games are you playing, like, for yourself and with your kid?
Well, we've been doing a lot of Super Smash Brothers Ultimate tournaments. He just got turned on to Persona 5, which we went through together before I let him play it. And then I think we're about to start our Animal Crossings. We hadn't, we downloaded it, but he wanted to get through some other games, and so we're going to join that enormous success that's going on right now. And that's what's been exciting also for me coming into this crisis and trying to figure out how our game's going to fit in. You are seeing stories in mainstream papers every day around the country about what games to play with your kids, what are cool ones for adults, how to connect, the sort of magical qualities of these games. So whether you're reading the Washington Post here in DC, or the New York Times, the LA Times, the Tribune, more and more reporters are focusing on the new games that are coming out on the consoles that will be coming out later this year, and about gameplay as a family and with friends. So it's exciting to see that there's a steady diet of video game reporting in Main Street papers. And I think that that bodes well for where we are going as a country and as an industry.
Well, I mean, we all know that all the large conferences and events have been canceled, but with the time that we are taking to re-examine the video game industry, is there any insights that you have that will be added for E3 2021, perhaps?
I think that we're going to be taking the time we need to see how we shape it to what's going to be the way that people want to connect. Obviously, digital has become a critical way that all companies try to reach audiences. And so you want to think about how do you expand that digital footprint to make sure that you're reaching everyone. But we're also, open to, how do you make a floor experience more dynamic for people who are there. And we'll just keep monitoring where we are in terms of the health situation and what we do. But we're really excited about revamping that experience, both for those who attend live, and also for those who in the global audiences who can't make it but want to be a part of that exciting moment, because E3 really is the premier industry event, and we want to make sure we live up to the high standard that our audiences expect.
Well, I am extremely grateful I got to have this conversation with you. Every time we talk, I feel like this is the right path I chose to be in the video game industry. There's so much that's happening, and it's only it appears to only be getting better. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for talking to me, and I can't wait to share our conversation.
Thank you.